all of the networks throw in and nominate their great shows. So, there's the Super Bowl, and there's this, and there's the golf, and there's this and that. And NBC always puts up the Olympics. And at this point in time, I have 6 Emmys to my name.
G'day, it's Lindsay Waddington here, and today we've got a special guest. This fella is a genius with sound. He's such a knowledgeable bloke, and really appreciate him coming around. Mr. Al Craig.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Oh, mate, thanks for coming around.
Yeah, sure.
Usually talking about, talking with artists and songwriters and that, but you've made your mark helping them sound great. Really, haven't you?
As a sound engineer, I've got my role of, producing and engineering the best sort of thing I can. And as a songwriter or co-writer, I'm more of an editor.
Yeah.
I'll listen to someone's start of a song and think about, is this a girl's song or a boy's song?
Mm-hmm.
Is this a first-person song or a third-person song? Mm-hmm. Is that verse the second verse or is it the first verse? So rather than actually contributing to the lyric, I'll question, should it be a but or an and?
Yeah, great.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I think I've got to, not only do I have an ear for the music and the chords and all of that, but just, listening how a song lyric gets structured and what it's trying to tell me,
You don't sound like you come from Western Queensland. Where are you from, Al?
No, I'm a Yank. I grew up in Indiana. Spent my youth in Indiana, went to university in Indiana, and then moved.
Doing sound?
I started doing sound at university.
So is that what you were studying at university? Or?
No, I was actually in the music program. I'm a saxophone player.
Yep.
And I was in a dual degree studying music education.
Mm-hmm.
By my degree, I should be a high school band teacher.
Yeah.
I've never done it. But I was also studying jazz.
Nice.
With a world-renowned jazz professor, David Baker. And my sax teacher was Eugene Rousseau, who was also a world-renowned sax teacher. So I was in good company. But I got started in sound because David Baker insisted that jazz students go to jazz concerts. Mm-hmm. And the main concert hall at Indiana University was the Musical Arts Center. The band was your typical big band of that era. Mm-hmm. 5 saxes, 5 bones, 5 trumpets, and a rhythm section. And they're all playing. And the sax player gets up and he walks to the microphone. And he starts to play. And there's nothing coming out of the microphone, out of the sound system. And I hear what, at that time, the only thing I knew about sound was what I knew from my hi-fi. I heard 5 measures in. That. Someone somewhere turned on the microphone.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's not right. That's unfair to my fellow students. So I went and complained to the administration the next day. And they put me on to some guy, and he put me on to some guy. And eventually I got to talking to some guy who I eventually found out was the guy who did that last night. But he didn't let on at that point. And he said, well, do you think you can do better? And I said, well, I have to be there because the jazz professor insists that we jazz students go to the jazz concerts. I know what it means when the guy gets up out of his chair and he walks to the center of the stage and he's about to play a solo. And if it's as simple as that, yeah, I can do better. And he goes, come with me. And he took me through the entire sound system of this place, and it was massive. It was little flaps in the floor where the mic got plugged into, and then a patch room where you cross-patched it, and then an amplifier room, and then up on the third balcony there was a mixing desk of some sorts. And he goes, you can do next Thursday night.
Did you think at that time you should have shut up?
Well, so next Thursday night came around, and I got there early and, and set it all up with him helping me. We got into the show, and I'm watching this show, and, and the sax player gets up, and it wasn't this, it was a fader. And the sax player gets up, and I turn up the fader, and the sax player plays, and I shut down the fader, and, oh, this is kind of cool. I'm participating with the musicians, but I'm not on stage. But I'm a part of. I'm the 15th member of the band.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, the jazz professor spied me up there in the balcony doing that. And the next day he says, "What were you doing?" I go, "Oh, well, Tom Wood said I could mix your shows." He goes, "Oh, this is great." He says, "What else can we do?" And I said, "Well, we could put up 2 microphones."
Yeah.
And the sax player can come here and the trumpet player can come here and you can, trade 8s or whatever. He goes, "Oh, that's good." And so over the course of the next 3 years, I did all jazz concerts and it got bigger and bigger.
Did you then think, I like this more than being a sax player on stage, Al?
In a way, yes, because I was surrounded by incredibly talented musicians. The Brecker brothers were there just before I got there. And Michael Brecker is regarded as the greatest sax player ever.
Did you keep playing though, Al?
After university? No, not really.
So you got into sound and stayed there?
I got into sound and stayed there.
Your parents?
Yeah.
What would, did you come from humble upbringings or were they into music? Were your parents into music or?
We were a middle-class family. My father was an engineer. He was a mechanical engineer at International Harvester. Had to do with building trucks. My mother was a homemaker. She played a little bit of piano. I had 3 brothers, and she insisted that we all take piano lessons. She hired a piano teacher, and he came around, and I went through all the basics that you do as you're learning piano of get your fingers down, and I didn't take to playing sheet music very well. I wasn't very good at it. I couldn't see the notes on the I knew what they were, and I could put my hands down, but then I'd have to look up and go, what's the next thing? And I couldn't play to time. But he recognized that I had an ear for melody because I could play the melody. And what he did was just turn my life around. He taught me how to read chords in the song.
Yep.
And we broke out my grandmother's hymn book, with all the classic church songs. And we'd pick a song, and he would, he'd say, okay, we know it's in the key of D. And so that first chord, look at it. Yeah, that's a D. So in pencil, we'll write a little D above it. And the next chord, that's a G. We'll write a G above that.
Yeah.
The next chord, that's an A. And he would help me learn how to learn the theory of that song. And then he would say, okay, I want you to play boom chuck music, which is D chord, D chord, D chord, A chord, D, that sort of barrel house jazz sort of.
Yeah.
And then my right hand, I could play the melody because I could hear it, I could sing it. And through that, I learned theory.
You enjoy it then?
And I enjoyed it then.
Enjoyed it. What a great teacher, though. Seeing that in you, and
instead
of you just
seeing
walking
that I
away.
had the ear rather than trying to make me play like piano player.
So why saxophone then? Was it a love for it, or you stumbled across it, Al? Or
saxophone came to me because in the U.S. education system, or at least where I went to school, in the 4th grade, they handed you a flutophone. Basically, it's a plastic recorder, and everybody'd pull out their plastic recorder and turn to page 3, and the teacher would go, okay, everybody, let's play this song, happy birthday to you, sort of thing. Well, the next year, 5th grade, is the first year that they start a band program. And because I was playing the flutophone, I went to the saxophone because it's the exact same fingering.
Yeah, gotcha.
Instead of the clarinet, which is kind of weird, and the trumpet, which is kind of weird, and trombone, which is kind of weird, saxophone suited me because I could already play it.
Yeah.
So I played saxophone right through university.
Where did you go from university, mate? Did you follow your heart, or did you have a job with sound? Or
Well, while I was in university, I had a mentor, not a fellow student, but he was like an associate professor or something. And he taught me a lot about the basics of sound. And in my last year at university, there was a group of students who had developed what they were calling an independent learning program in theater technology. And that was sets and staging and lighting and makeup and wardrobe and all the things that were associated sort of with opera. And then they had an element of sound. And they came to me and said, well, can you teach these people what you do in the Musical Arts Center? And so I had this one student, Carol J. Carol was an interesting person, but she claimed her mother's boyfriend was a big shot producer in New York City. And we all went, yeah, okay, sure, Carol. Okay. Well, the summer I graduated, I went down to Nashville. I worked for a theme park down there called Opryland, which doesn't exist anymore, but was at the time kind of like Six Flags, kind of like SeaWorld up here. But it had a lot of live entertainment stages. And I worked in a small theater that had a show called I Hear America Singing. And it was a cast of maybe 10, 12, 15 other high school, university students singing the American Songbook with a band, and going through a whole show, a whole scripted show. And, I'm pushing a lot of faders and making it sound good. And at the end of that summer, I get a call from Carol. And she says, I told you about my mother's boyfriend, a big shot producer. They're losing their lead audio guy. Would you like to come to New York and come to work for them? I said, well, okay, have him call me. So this big shot producer calls me up. And in fact, he was a big shot producer. And he calls me up and we're talking on the phone. I'm in Nashville. And he says, well, why don't you come up to Philadelphia next weekend? And we're doing a track and field at the University of Pennsylvania, some NCAA thing. Come up and meet the guys and see what we do, and we'll talk, and we'll see if you fit, and if this is right for you. I got about $6 in my pocket. Yeah, how am I going to get to? He picked up on this, and he goes, no. There's a plane ticket waiting for you. When you get there, there'll be a Hertz rental car. Drive to the University of Pennsylvania. Go to the track and field stadium. Find the big white trucks. Come see me.
Oh, wow.
So I did. And I went in there, and these guys were talking a whole different language in terms of what I was used to and what I'd grown up with, because it was broadcast. It wasn't live sound. It wasn't studio sound. It was broadcast. And that night in the bar, the big shot producer was sitting on one side of me, and the truck engineer was sitting on the other side of me. And he was going, it was like having the two devils on your shoulder. He was going, hey, we like you, come to work for us. And this guy's going, go back to Nashville and chase your dream of being a studio engineer, Yeah. Finally, I said, I'm going back to Nashville.
Oh, really?
I did.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, Carol calls me up and she goes, guess what? They're in Nashville doing the rodeo. Go down there and tell them you want to go to work for them. And I did. Yeah. And 2 weeks later, I was moving to New Jersey, New York, and working for this company. And in the course of the next year, this company was, at that time, there was only 3 networks, CBS, NBC, and ABC. And all of those networks had their own outside broadcast trucks, and they had their own outside broadcast crews. And there wasn't that much airtime. There might have been a football game on a Sunday afternoon. There might have been a basketball game. Well, this company had the contract to do the Long Islanders hockey on Tuesday nights, and the New York Nets on Thursday nights, and the Trotters on Friday nights, and the flat track horses on Saturdays. So, every gig was slightly different.
Yeah.
And a huge learning experience for me. And that went on for about a year. And then the company said, we're going to make you all redundant, but we'll hire you back as freelancers. And I said, no, I'm not comfortable. I haven't been in New York. It's not right for me. I moved back to Nashville.
You went back doing sound in Nashville?
Went back to Nashville. And again, it was always my dream to, work at one of the big recording studios and, be a recording engineer and produce and whatever. My brother was a bartender for a restaurant whose owners also owned the Exit Inn, which is a very famous club.
Yep.
Similar in Australia to the Basement in Sydney.
Lizottes.
350 seats.
Yep.
Sticky floors, black tiled, black painted ceilings, crappy sound system, crappy stage, crappy lighting system, but night after night of some of the best acts of the late 70s. Leon Redbone,
yep.
Asleep at the Wheel, Blood, Sweat and Tears,
Yeah.
Weather Report,
Yeah.
Steve Martin, Talking Heads, The Ramones, George Thorogood and the Destroyers,
Wow.
B.B. King,
Oh, man.
Bobby Blue Bland,
Yeah.
and on it went.
And were they like repeat offenders? Did they come through a lot so you got to know them, Al, or some were just one-offs?
I think in the 2 years that I worked there, I think I saw B.B. King. They would always book B.B. 3 nights, and I think I saw him 3 times.
Yeah.
And then the following week they'd have Bobby Blue Bland because it was like Blues Week. I grew so tired of the blues. 12-bar blues just wears me out. It's like, I know what's coming next, you know. And then there was others that, you know, only came through once. And, you know, my favorite story, my favorite act that came through was Pat Metheny Group.
Mm-hmm.
These 4 boys showed up in a van, came up onto the stage. I'd read about them in Downbeat magazine. You know, I'd heard a little bit about him, but I didn't know the genius of Pat Metheny. And of course, Nashville being full of guitarists, the audience was full of guitarists, and you could have heard a pin drop that night. And when he showed up, I said, you know, I met him for sound check, and I said, Pat, I'm your sound and light guy. What do you need? And he goes, oh, I just need 1 mic on stage to make announcements. And I said, okay, cool. I said, would it be okay if I went ahead and mic'd everything up the way I normally would? And if I feel like something needs a little bit of reinforcement, I might, you know, sneak a little bit and nudge it in there. And he goes, yeah, do what you want. Well, I got the best cassette recording you can imagine out of that night. You know, I had a way of massaging this desk because we used to do live radio shows. We had phone lines that went down to WKDF, and there'd be an occasion of where we'd have to do a live radio show, and the DJ would come and, you know, and announce, and we'd send this mix down there. So I developed this technique of being able to record without anybody knowing I was recording into a Marantz Super Scope recorder. In the times that I was at the Exit Inn, there was occasions where acts would ask me to come out on the road, and I usually refused because I loved the club, I loved the variety, I loved the neighborhood where the Exit Inn is located. Was known as the Rock Block. And it was a real happening
place to be
area at that time. And if you were a part of the inner family, you were in, and you were protected, and you were loved. Yeah. And I didn't want to leave. Yeah. But then what happened with Blood, Sweat and Tears, they'd played there a couple of times. And the last time they played, they came to me and they said, oh, our front of house guy is crook. He's going to stay at the Holiday Inn until showtime. Can you just do sound check for us? Just get things up and running. And I said, yeah, okay. That's my job anyway. So, and then during the show, I sort of stood back and I assisted him, but, you know, let him mix his show. And several weeks later, I was in Puerto Rico working on the Pan American Games for this company out of New York. They had the contract to do the Pan Am Games, which is like the Commonwealth Games. Yep. And I was down there, and I get a call from my roommate. He says, oh, I've just had this call from some manager in New York, and he wants to get in touch with you. And I said, okay, well, give him my hotel number. And he called me up. He says, how would you like to go out on the road with Blood, Sweat, and Tears? And I went, yes, thank you. Yes, because I like the music. I grew up with Blood, Sweat, and Tears in Chicago and Earth, Wind, and Fire and Emerson, Lake, and Palmer. You know, that's my ilk. And I recognize that, you know, I wouldn't hear the same solo night after night because they're a jazz band. Yeah. You know, it wouldn't be boring. It might be the same set list, but it wouldn't be boring. And I got home from Puerto Rico and I flew off to Dallas, and they had a 2-week gig at the Playboy Club. And I walked in there, and the road manager / lighting guy said, well, the monitor engineer has control of the front of house and monitors. There's nothing really for you to do. Just learn the show. Yeah. Meet the guys, become a part of the family. And I did. And I spent 2 more years out on the road. Wow. Touring America. But Blood, Sweat and Tears wasn't huge at the time. You know, they had peaked in the early 70s, and this is now late 70s. You know, so we were doing the Hilton circuit and the occasional festival here and there, and not much. But then we'd get the overseas tours. Yeah. And the overseas tours were great because we'd send We'd send the contract, and we'd send the writer, and we'd send the stage plot, and we'd get there, and it was built perfectly, exactly as we wanted it, you know, with all the right mics and all the right places and everything. And we came to Australia. I can't remember the dates, but it was late 70s, early 80s. And we were playing St. George leagues and Penrith leagues.
Yeah.
And then we came up to the Gold Coast, and we were playing Twin Towns. And I think we did like 4 or 5 days at Twin Towns. I don't remember a whole lot about it other than one night when the show was over, the band always went down to the bar on the 3rd floor, and I went down to the bar on the 3rd floor, and lo and behold, across the room, there was this goddess talking to the bass player. And I went, oh, that's my in. I can go up and talk to her because she's talking to my bass player.
Yeah.
And I went up and joined the conversation. And the next day we were walking hand in hand down Coolangatta Beach.
How good.
41 years ago.
And still together. That's so good, mate. And that's you got to thank the band for that, being out on the road.
I do.
And you must love bass players then, because if he was a better bloke, you might not have got there.
I do love bass players. Yes, I do. Jocko, thank you very much. She got a job in a travel agency. She's a travel agent, and she was regarded because of her accent. Everybody in America loves the Australian / English accent, you know. They're just immediately attracted. So, you know, she was a big hit. I continued to do some sound in Nashville, did some studio stuff, worked for the Tennessee Performing Arts Center for a while, got connected to a company that was building a remote truck that was a huge 45-foot tractor trailer that only had audio in it, and a big sound desk and speakers and everything. And we took the truck out to Las Vegas for the annual National Association of Broadcasters show and parked it on the lot along with some other trucks that were showing themselves off. And several weeks later, we get a call from this guy, David Hewitt, who is like the OB remote engineer in the country. And he said, how would you guys like to go to Minneapolis next week and connect in with the Prince tour? So we went up there. It was the first of a year-long tour of the PurpleRain album.
Yeah.
And we connected into their system, and I sat in the truck and I waited for the command to hit roll. And I waited and I waited. Several days later, I waited. And then they finally said, hey, over the intercom, hey, Al, roll tape. Roll tape. They recorded sound check. And he turned to the bass player and he says, give me a little bit of this. And he'd set up a little riff and the bass player would pick up on it. Bass player would start playing. And sound people are making the bass sound pretty good. And the bass player's got some freedom to go with it and jam on it. And he turns to the drummer. He goes, now against that, give me a little bit of, and he'd set the drummer up with some sort of groove and they would start jamming. And then he'd go to the keyboard player and then he'd start playing and they would jam for an hour.
Oh, really?
And I'd record it.
Wow. And then was it purely for that, or were they searching for something for songs or something, Al? Or
he'd take the tape home to his home studio, and this is before Paisley Park, so he had a studio in his basement. And he'd put the tape on, and he'd listen to what the bass player. He had an idea, but he'd listen to what where the bass player took it,
and pull ideas from
and
it.
He'd pull ideas from that, and write his songs around the jam.
Oh wow! And would they be like songwriting credits there, or no?
I don't know the full legal story, and I can't really comment, but I heard that the band wasn't very happy.
Yeah. And how long did you do that then for?
That lasted about a year. We were placed on standby on a retainer that when Prince said, I need a truck, we'd get the call and we would go. So, one weekend it was off to Washington, and there would be 3 weeks of nothing, and then we'd be off to Dallas.
Wow.
And then at the end of the tour, he closed the tour back in Minneapolis. We pulled the truck in, we parked, we patched up to the front of house split. And 2 days later I get a call, Prince wants the truck out at his house. And I said, well, I don't have a truck driver. Oh, we can get you a truck driver. And they took the truck out to his house, parked it in his driveway, and they said to me, now we need you to go out of an evening, warm it up, do the tape alignment, get the whole thing ready. We'll show up when we show up. So they'd play their show. They'd go to their after party. They'd show up about 3, 4 in the morning.
And you got to start working.
And basically they were assembling the next album. So they'd have two-track quarter-inch tapes, and they'd put it on our machine. They'd run it through the thing, and they would edit, or razor blade back in those days, and put the next album together. And that was the project.
You must have seen things change. Like, I know I only spent that much time on tape, on reels, and then went to hard disk recorders, and now, like, obviously in the box with computers and that, like back when you were talking about razor blade and cutting tapes and splicing, it was real art. Engineering and that back then in studios. There's an art now, but you know what I mean? There was a real art to it, Al.
Well, and it was incredibly nerve-wracking.
Yep.
If you're cutting together, a radio show or something like that, and you make a cut, and then you realize you're that far out, it's really hard to recover that much tape and get it back on.
Yeah.
Whereas now with digital audio recording, it's like slides, done.
Yeah. Scrape, undo, whatever.
And then there was always, you'd have to, if you were assembling an album, it was, you'd have the song. And you cut, and then you have to put leader tape on, and there's, so much leader tape that you had to put on so that when it went to the vinyl cutting lathe, it was all ready to go.
You've done all these wonderful things as an engineer and on the road and in some of the most iconic venues, but you keep going back to the broadcasting. Now, you're a bit of a celebrity and a well-known person around the Olympic Games, Winter Olympics.
Winter, summer, yeah.
And now I have heard on the grapevine you've been a part of a team that's achieved something pretty massive. You got a few awards there, haven't you?
I can't remember the organization in America, but the Emmy Awards comes up. The Sports Emmy Awards comes up, and all of the networks throw in and nominate their great shows. So, there's the Super Bowl, and there's this, and there's the golf, and there's this and that. And NBC always puts up the Olympics. And at this point in time, I have 6 Emmys to my name.
Mate.
I would trade all 6 if I had a Grammy, because that's where my heart is, I wish I had gone that direction and stayed with that direction.
There must be some stress behind this. You've got millions of people around the world watching, and it's like, oh, gee, Al, it's got to be the old, you talk about music's in your heart, but that's got to have your heart racing sometimes.
Yeah. I've been lucky enough to be involved in studio.
Yep.
I've been lucky enough to be involved in live PA work,
yep,
which I really, really enjoy doing that, other than schlepping gear up 30 flights of steps to go to some club and have some crap band that you got to work that night. But working with someone like BloodSweat&Tears or something like that, in good equipment, I really, really like the thrill of the crowd.
Yeah.
And I like being the 8th member of the band.
Yep.
In fact, when the band management said, "How much do you guys want to get paid?" I said, "Same as the musos."
Yeah.
Why is that? Because I'm a muso, and what I'm doing is critical to what they're doing.
Absolutely.
And they agreed to that. So yeah. But to answer your question, broadcast can be counted on. If I get a call today to do something in October for one of the local networks or whatever, I can pretty much put that in pen in my diary. If I get a call today to do some music festival in October,
sales could be down, whatever.
It goes in pencil,
yeah,
and we'll wait and see, because I had it happen a lot back in the States that 3 days before the show, no, it's been canceled, or it's raining and
ticket sales,
and
whatever,
we can't get it rigged and whatever, and I just fell into broadcast and got good at it. My very first Olympics was the Sydney Games.
Yes,
and for that I worked for the host broadcaster. And then after that, I've worked with NBC ever since, who are the American rights holder.
That's so great. And do you like the sports, or you just?
I'm not a sports fan.
well, that's going to bugger my next question, because don't you do the Big Bash cricket and
rugby league?
Rugby league,
a lot of rugby league.
Yeah.
I can come home from rugby league and Diane will say, "Who won?" And go,
"Who played?
Who played?" "Oh, we must have been at this stadium, so it must have been. Yeah, we must have played. There must have been Rabbitohs and Dolphins."
I love it. We've got a mutual friend, and you're lucky enough to spend a bit of time with this legend. He's from over your way too, Mr. Louie Shelton.
Yes.
He's done some recording here, and he's been a part of our podcast. The lovely fella as you are, Alan. But you just play a bit of golf together, don't you?
We golf together. Well, Louie and I met When I first moved to Sydney,
Yep.
I had this black book, and I forget what it was called. It was a certain, it was an annually published thing that had every media company, every recording studio, every outlet in it. And I went through that book religiously to all these studios and all these broadcasters trying to get work.
Yeah.
You know, here I am with 15 years of experience in America. I'm pretty good at broadcasting. I'm a pretty good sound live engineer,
Yep.
and I'm pretty good in the studio. I know how to roll a 24-track tape. I know how to mic up a drum kit. And I met Louie because he owned a studio at that time down on Sussex Street called Blue Horizon. And we discovered that we lived about 3 blocks from each other.
Oh, no way.
And all of a sudden, his wife and my wife became friends, and Louie and I became friends, and his kids and my baby daughter, you know, it was, you know, barbecues and, you know, things like that. And then we discovered that he played golf at the local club, and I joined up there, and then he moved back to America.
Yeah.
And went back to Nashville and decided, I think it was his kids who wanted to actually come back to Australia.
Yeah.
And they moved back to Australia, but they moved up here to the Gold Coast.
Yep.
In the studio in Sydney at Black Ink, every now and then I'd have a project where I need a smoking hot guitar player.
He's the man.
Hey, Louie, if I send you a track that's roughly mixed, do you think you could put down guitar on the right channel and leave the down mix on the left channel? And then I'll upload that to the multi-track or to the digital audio workstation. And the clients just loved it because now all of a sudden, you know, they had a real guitar player on their track.
He's a monster. What a player. Incredible. Still there. And most loveliest bloke.
But then you speak of others on the Gold Coast. We must talk about Allan Caswell.
We're lucky to have him here all the time, mate. And love the bloke. Great songwriter. Well, one of the best.
Prolific. When I was touring and I was in Sydney, Diane and I were downtown Sydney at a record store. And I had on my Exit In t-shirt. And this bloke walks up to me and goes, "I've played there."
That's
Kaz. I looked down and I went, No, you haven't. He goes, Yeah, I did a writer's night. No, you haven't. He goes, Yeah. You remember, you know, a year and a half ago, I was in town on the label's dime, and the rule was you'd audition for me and my partner, and we would put you on in 2 weeks' time. That was always the turnaround, was 2 weeks. And depending on how good you were, it depended on what time slot you got. And the rule was 15 minutes or 3 songs, whichever is shortest. And that would keep us turning over in 15-minute slots. Well, apparently Kaz came in and cried that, well, I won't be here in 2 weeks' time because I'm only out here on a promotional tour for my album. Can I get on tonight? And apparently we put him on. 6 months later, a year later or something, Diane and I are in a Fern bar in Nashville, some opening at this new place. And Diane says, "I hear Australian." We're looking around the room. We hear Australian. Lo and behold, there's Kaz sitting there with a bunch of other people. You know, we went over and joined him, and we had the most fun pub crawl that week you could imagine. And
does he drink?
Uncle Jack. So when I moved over to Australia finally, when Diane convinced me to move over here, we moved to Sydney because I knew that would be, you know, it was either Sydney or Melbourne for what I wanted to do. Anyway, I got a hold of Kaz, and he says, "Oh, it's good timing." He says, "We're about to go in the studio and record a kids album." Now, this was in his Don Spencer days, but this wasn't a Don Spencer project. This was something that Sony Records or somebody had commissioned. They wanted an album of dinosaur songs.
Okay.
So Kaz had written a whole bunch of dinosaur songs. If I could be big, if I could be big, I'd like to be big like a dinosaur.
Oh, you still remember it all?
Oh, yeah. You can't get rid of Caswell songs in your head. So, you know, I engineered and mixed and mastered that for him. And we stayed in touch. And then in 2002, Diane and I bought Black Ink Recorders in St. Leonard's.
Yep.
And 6-8 weeks later, my receptionist decided to move on and quit. And I called up Caswell because at the time he was working for a recruitment agency.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, Kaz, I need a receptionist. Well, what does that person do? Answers the phone, does the books, greets the client. He goes, I can do that. I said, you know what? You're right. You're hired.
Yeah.
So I hired him. He became my business development manager.
Yeah.
He actually took over my office. I sat out at the reception desk. I did the books. I took the phone calls. And over the course of the next year, we would close the door at 5 o'clock and go into the studio and write songs. I probably have 60 songs that I'm a co-writer on. But the first album that we did together was Al's Bar and Grill.
Yeah.
Which was, actually it's a joke on the word Al's because we put the apostrophe after the S. Because it was Al's Bar and Grill.
Actually, I don't think I bloody picked up on that.
but every song on there I had a co-write. And to this day, I get a royalty check every 6 months of good old $17 coming in.
That's one of his best albums, mate. Not saying it because you're there. I actually love it. I've got to say, I think him, like I met you through Kaz. Like he is a connected bloke. He's been around. Yeah. Everybody knows him and he's done so much in the music industry. You should be proud of it. So you're off to the Olympic Games. What do you reckon after that, Al? Are you going to keep going with broadcasting? What do you reckon's coming up for you? Well, because I've moved to the Gold Coast and away from the Sydney, I was very busy in Sydney with broadcast and some sound, and the connections I had down there and the little studio I had in my garage. I moved up here. My studio's in my 4th bedroom. Doesn't get turned on much. I've told my clients down in Sydney, I said, look, just move me to the bottom of the list. Don't call me until you run out of people and you absolutely need my expertise. And then I'll think about it. Yeah, yeah. So I've learned how to say no. How long do the Olympics go for, Al? Well, for you, because my contract's 7 weeks. Wow. But the games themselves are 2.5 or something towards the end of that. It's the setting up, packing up too. It's all wiring it up and making it work and testing and testing and testing and testing. Yeah. And a lot of labeling. First thing I do is I get myself one of those P-Touch labelers. Yeah, yeah. And I just label the crap out of everything because my previous boss said, make it so that if you get sick, if you fall down, if you get hit by a bus, anybody can come in here and figure out what you've done by the labels. Well, mate, it's been great chatting to you. I'll probably visit you in the Brisbane ones because I reckon you'll still be going. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. Just depends on how I feel. I mean, I'll be 82 years old when the Brisbane games come around. Will you really? Yeah. Well, sorry, wait a second. I'll be 80 when the Brisbane games come around, Only young, mate. Yeah, I know. But, and like I said, NBC likes the older blokes because we know. As long as they don't try to treat me like a local and make me drive to Brisbane every day. Anyway, thank you very much for watching the podcast. And thanks, Al. It's been really great having you, mate. Good luck with your travels, and we'll see you very soon. Thank you very much. All right. That's a wrap.